Alistair Blackwood, a man who bought and sold entire horizons before breakfast, was furious. He sneered at his legal team in the world's most exclusive restaurant, his voice a low growl. "Find me someone, anyone who can read this, or you are all fired." He grabs the nearest waitress, a quiet girl named Ellie. He shoves his tablet in her face, displaying a script of an extinct, impossible language. "I'll give you $10,000 if you can even tell me what this is." He was mocking her. But then she spoke, and the billionaire's entire world shattered. The restaurant, Aura, was not a place for people. It was a museum for wealth, a silent, carpeted cathedral where conversations were held in hushed tones, and a dropped fork echoed like a gunshot. Its patrons didn't just have money, they were money, and the staff, led by the meticulously obsequious manager Morgan, were trained to be ghosts, efficient, silent, and invisible. Among these ghosts, Ellie Vance was the most transparent. At 27, Ellie moved with an economy of motion that was almost unnerving. She didn't walk, she glided. She refilled water glasses before the guest even noticed the level had dropped. Morgan, her manager, considered her a model employee precisely because he never had to think about her. She was just Ellie. Plain, with her brown hair pulled back in a severe bun, her face pleasant but forgettable, and her eyes, the only interesting part of her, always downcast. This Tuesday evening was unusually tense. The 12-top reservation in the private Voltaire suite was running 3 hours late, and the guest was Alistair Blackwood. Alistair Blackwood was not just a billionaire, he was a corporate predator. He didn't build companies, he consumed them. He was tall, sharp-edged, and wore a custom suit with the casual arrogance of a man who had never been told no and meant it. He was dining with his executive team, and the mood was toxic. "It's unacceptable," Blackwood seethed, his voice cutting through the engineered calm of the suite. He wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. His whisper carried more threat than a shout. "The entire deal hinges on the contents of the Alaxu document, and you're telling me, again, that the linguistics team is stumped." His chief counsel, a nervous man named Gregory, dabbed his forehead. "Alistair, it's not a known language. We've run it past every expert. It's just symbols. The last translator we hired in Istanbul had a nervous breakdown." "Then find another," Blackwood snapped, throwing his napkin onto his barely touched plate of seared scallops. Ellie entered at that exact moment, a silver tray balanced on one hand to clear the plates. She moved toward Blackwood, her eyes on the table, a silent phantom. "This is a disaster," Blackwood continued, ignoring her presence completely. He pulled out his high-spec tablet, tapping the screen angrily. "This document is the only existing proof of prior claim. Our rivals at Rossi Corp are closing in, and I'm being stonewalled by dead scribbles." He slammed the tablet on the table, the screen facing up. Ellie, while reaching for Gregory's plate, saw it. She couldn't help it. Her eyes locked onto the screen. It wasn't just symbols, it wasn't dead scribbles. It was Ubik. Specifically, a complex, archaic dialect of Ubik, a language that had been declared officially extinct in 1992 with the death of its last fluent speaker, Tevfik Esenç. But what Blackwood had on his screen was more than that. It was Ubik mixed with Proto-Abkhazian loanwords and a grammatical structure that Ellie had only ever seen in one other place, the unpublished, disgraced dissertation of her former mentor. Blackwood noticed her. His eyes, cold and blue, flicked from the tablet to her face. He saw her pause, a microsecond hesitation that, to a man like him, was a gross insubordination of her role. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. Morgan, the manager, materialized instantly, his face pale. "Mr. Blackwood, sir. My apologies. Ellie, do your job. Do not disturb the guests." "No, no, Morgan. Wait," Blackwood said, a cruel, amused smile twisting his lips. He was in a foul mood and had just found a target. "She seems interested. You're interested, aren't you?" He pointed to the screen. "My Ivy League legal team can't read this. My six-figure linguistic consultants can't read this. But you, a waitress, you look like you have an opinion." His team chuckled nervously. "What's your name?" Blackwood demanded. "Ellie, sir." "Ellie," he repeated, savouring the name. "Well, Ellie, I'm in a sporting mood. Tell you what, $10,000. Right here, right now. If you can read just one word." He held the tablet up, shoving it toward her face. It was an act of pure, distilled arrogance. He wasn't offering her a chance. He was making a public joke. He was demonstrating that the world was full of incompetent experts and interchangeable, useless Ellies. Ellie's heart was hammering. She looked at Morgan, who was vibrating with silent rage, motioning for her to apologize and leave. She looked at Gregory, who was looking at her with pity. She looked back at the tablet. She saw the words, and the meaning flowed into her mind as easily as English. The text was a legal deposition. She focused on the first line. Her lips parted. A sound emerged, deep, guttural and complex, full of pharyngeal consonants and sibilant hisses that had not been uttered fluently by a human in decades. "Awan. Mezakan. Bzujakara." The laughter in the room died instantly. It didn't just stop, it was sucked into a vacuum. Gregory's jaw fell open. Blackwood's smile didn't just fade, it froze, cracking like ice. Ellie cleared her throat, her voice returning to its normal, quiet English, though it was shaking. "It says, 'That which was taken from the valley of the two rivers shall be witness to its own passage.'" She then pointed a trembling finger at a cluster of symbols in the margin. And this annotation here," she said, her voice gaining a fraction of academic confidence. "Your previous translator, he mistook the possessive marker R for the ergative case. It's a common error for anyone treating Ubik as a purely polysynthetic language. It's not. It's a hybrid. The entire meaning is changed." She paused, realizing what she'd done, and her blood ran cold. She looked up at Alistair Blackwood. He was no longer looking at her like a piece of furniture. He was looking at her as if she had just grown a second head. The silence in the room was absolute. "Morgan," Blackwood said, his voice terrifyingly calm. Yes. "Mr. Blackwood, get everyone out of this room, except for her." The door to the Voltaire suite clicked shut, leaving Ellie alone with Alistair Blackwood. The remnants of the lavish dinner sat between them like a battlefield. The tension from before was gone, replaced by something far more potent. Pressurized, weaponized curiosity. Blackwood stared at her, his blue eyes scanning her as if she were a line of code he was trying to debug. He hadn't moved. He simply sat, his hands steepled in front of him. "Sit down," he said. It wasn't a request. Ellie sat opposite him, her hands folded in her lap, her waitress apron suddenly feeling like a ridiculous costume. $10,000, he said, pulling a sleek, carbon fiber wallet from his jacket. He extracted a debit card, a black, metal card with no numbers, and a business card. He slid them both across the mahogany table. "The PIN for the debit card is my birth year, 1978. There is a $50,000 balance on it. The first $10,000 is yours, as promised." Ellie looked at the cards but didn't touch them. "Sir, The other 40,000, he interrupted, is a retainer. I don't know who you are or what you are, but you are going to translate the rest of that document. Tonight." Ellie's mind was racing. This was a nightmare. This was the one thing she had sworn she would never do again. The world she had run from, the world of academia, of high-stakes knowledge, the world that had tried to destroy her, had just found her, bussing tables at Aura. "I can't," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Can't?" Blackwood repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "You just read a language that, according to every expert I've paid, is dead. You didn't just read it, you corrected it. So don't tell me you can't." "It's not my life anymore," she said, louder this time. "I'm a waitress. I shouldn't have said anything. Please, just let me go." "Let you go?" He laughed, a short, sharp, humorless sound. "Ellie, I don't think you understand the situation. You are currently the only person on Earth, apparently, who can read a document that is vital to a $30 billion acquisition. Letting you go is not on the menu." He leaned forward. "What's your price? I already offered 50,000. Is it 100? 200? 500,000? Name it. I need that translation, and I need it by 6:01 a.m. $500,000. The number hung in the air, glittering and obscene. It was a number that could solve every problem in Ellie's life. It could pay off the mountain of medical debt her mother had left behind. It could buy her a small, quiet house somewhere no one would ever find her. It could buy her freedom, but it came at the cost of returning to the one thing that had cost her everything. "It's not about the money," she lied. "It's always about the money," Blackwood retorted, standing up. He began to pace. "You're not a waitress. I don't know what you're hiding from, but it's over. You work for me now. You will translate the Alaxu document. I will win my bid, and you will be wealthier than you can imagine. Or," he paused, "you can refuse, and I will find out who you are by sunrise. I will find out why you're hiding, and I will use whatever that secret is to make you." It was a perfect, brutal checkmate. He had her trapped. Ellie felt the old, familiar ice creep into her veins, the terror of being exposed, and beneath it, the cold, sharp spark of anger. The part of her she'd tried to bury, the genius part. "Confidentiality," she said, her voice suddenly devoid of its tremor. Blackwood stopped pacing. "What?" "I want a non-disclosure agreement. Mutually binding. You will never reveal my identity or my involvement. You will never ask me about my past. You will never contact me again after this night." He smiled. "Done." "And I want the 500,000, she added, her eyes meeting his for the first time. "In a bearer bond transfer to an account I will provide. Not in escrow. Transferred. Before I begin." Blackwood's smile widened. He respected this. The waitress was gone, and the negotiator had arrived. 500,000 is a lot for a few hours' work. "You don't know what you're asking me to read," Ellie said. "This isn't a land deed, Mr. Blackwood. The Ubik were poets, but they were also precise. This dialect was used for ritualistic pacts. You're not just reading a claim, you're reading a curse. You need me to interpret the nuance, or whatever claim you think you have will blow up in your face." Blackwood studied her, his mind calculating. He recognized the truth when he heard it. He also recognized a predator equal to himself, just in a different jungle. "My legal team will be here in 20 minutes with the NDA and the wire transfer confirmation," he said. He gestured to the adjoining room, a small library. "You'll work in there. Do not leave. A guard will be posted outside your door, and outside the restaurant." He paused at the door. "Ellie, what did you say your last name was?" "Vance," she said, her voice flat. "Vance," he repeated. I have a feeling I'm going to remember that name." He left. Ellie was alone again, the silence of the room now feeling like the inside of a bank vault. She walked to the window, looking down at the city lights. She had just sold her soul, the one thing she had managed to keep, to the one man who embodied everything she had run away from. She picked up the black debit card, $50,000, a down payment. She turned from the window, her expression hardening. If she was going back into that world, she wouldn't be a victim. Not again. For the next 6 hours, Ellie worked. Blackwood's team had set her up in the library with a laptop, secure servers, and endless pots of black coffee. She didn't touch the coffee. She worked from the high-resolution images of the Alaxu document, a series of 12 vellum-bound pages. To Blackwood's team, watching her through a security feed, a fact she was acutely aware of, she was just typing. But in Ellie's mind, she was walking through history. The language was even more complex than she'd first thought. It was a formal compact, written by a Ubik warlord in the late 18th century, detailing a sacred stewardship of a specific, uncharted valley in the Caucasus. The document didn't just grant ownership of the land, it detailed a blood pact with the land itself. It listed geological markers, star alignments, and specific flora, a type of rare, bioluminescent moss that only grew over a vast, undiscovered mineral deposit. This wasn't a land deed. It was a treasure map written by a shaman. As she translated, she realized the document was a key and lock text. She was translating the key. But the lock, a corresponding document, a map, or perhaps even a verbal history, was missing. The document referenced a brother of the word, a guardian who held the other half of the compact. By 5:45 a.m., she was finished. She had the full translation, along with a 20-page addendum of her own analysis, cultural context, and a stark warning about the brother of the word clause. She printed it, signed the last page of her NDA, and walked out to the main dining room, which was now a makeshift corporate war room. Blackwood was there, along with Gregory and 2 new, sharp-eyed women she hadn't seen before. They all looked exhausted, but their eyes were electric. Ellie placed the binder on the table. "It's done." Blackwood snatched it. He didn't thank her. He just started reading. Gregory read over his shoulder, his eyes widening. "Valley of the glowing moss?" Gregory murmured. "Alistair, this is what the geological surveys were hinting at. This is it." "The brother of the word," Blackwood said, his eyes fixed on Ellie's analysis. "What is that?" "It's a failsafe," Ellie said, her voice tired but firm. "The compact is void without the participation of the holder of the second text. It states that any attempt to tame the earth without the brother's blessing will result in, well, the translation is the sky fire returning. I assume that means a catastrophic failure, a curse if you're poetic, a legal loophole if you're not." Blackwood looked up, his expression unreadable. "And where is this brother?" "The text doesn't say. It only gives a linguistic clue. He who speaks the mountain's tongue." Blackwood stared at her. You can find him." It wasn't a question. Ellie's blood ran cold. This wasn't the deal. "My work is done. I translated the document. I upheld my side of the NDA." "We had a deal, Dr. Vance," a new voice said. Ellie froze. One of the new women, with sharp features and a tablet of her own, was looking at her. "I'm sorry," Ellie said. "You have me mistaken." "I don't think so," the woman said, turning her tablet around. On the screen was a photograph of a much younger Ellie, bright-eyed, standing next to a grey-haired man, accepting an award. The caption read, "Dr. Ellie Vance, linguistics prodigy, wins Kalin Prize for Proto-Indo-European Research, Blackwood had lied. While she was translating, he had put his real team to work, not on the document, but on her. Dr. Ellie Vance, the woman, Blackwood's head of research, continued in a monotone. Doctorate in Historical Linguistics from Yale at 22. Doctoral advisor, Dr. Aris Thorne. Specialized in extinct Caucasian languages. Published 14 papers. Then, 5 years ago, you were brought up on charges of academic fraud. Falsifying data on your dissertation. Your rival, Dr. Jackson Haas, published a paper disproving your entire thesis. You were disgraced. You lost your tenure track. You vanished. The room was silent. Blackwood hadn't taken his eyes off her. It seems Dr. Vance has a history of faking her work, Blackwood said, his voice a purr. And here you are, bringing me a translation about glowing moss and sky fire curses. How do I know this isn't fraudulent, too? This was the trap. He had the translation. Now he was establishing grounds to discredit her, to blackmail her, to own her. Ellie felt the floor drop out from under her. The shame, the fury, the terror she had suppressed for 5 years came flooding back. She looked at Blackwood, and the fear in her eyes was replaced by a fire so cold it was almost white. "You think I'm lying?" she whispered. "I think you're a disgraced academic, hiding as a waitress, who I just paid $500,000 to," Blackwood countered. "You're going to find this brother of the word. You're going to validate this discovery. And you're going to do it because if you don't, I will personally send copies of your creative translation, along with your official academic history, to every news outlet on the planet. By noon, Dr. Vance will be a global laughingstock again." Ellie stood there, her hands clenched so tightly her nails were biting into her palms. She had 2 choices: run and be destroyed, or fight. "Jackson Haas," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "He didn't disprove my thesis. He stole it. He stole my data, my life's work, and published it under his own name after framing me." "A compelling story," Blackwood said, unimpressed. "It changes nothing." "You want the brother of the word?" Ellie said, her voice rising. "You want the rest of the puzzle? Fine. But my price just went up. You want my brain? You're going to pay for what was done to it." Blackwood raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And what's the new price, Dr. Vance?" "I'll find your brother. I'll secure your claim," Ellie said. "And in exchange, you will do one thing for me." "And that is?" "You will give me Jackson Haas. You will use your resources to find the proof that he framed me, and you will help me destroy him as completely as he destroyed me." A slow, predatory smile spread across Alistair Blackwood's face. He had expected her to crumble. He had not expected this. This, he understood. This was a language he was fluent in. "Dr. Vance," he said, extending a hand, "I believe we have a new partnership." The next 48 hours were a blur. Ellie was extracted from her old life. She was moved from her tiny walk-up apartment to a sterile, high-tech penthouse at the Blackwood Tower, her guard, now a personal assistant. Her waitress uniform was replaced by a wardrobe of bespoke, severe and expensive clothing. She was, in effect, a prisoner in a very gilded cage. While she worked, Blackwood's machine worked faster. His research team, the ones who had unmasked her, were now turned loose on Dr. Jackson Haas. Simultaneously, Blackwood's other rival, the formidable CEO of Rossi Corp., Isabella Rossi, was making moves. Isabella Rossi was everything Alistair Blackwood was not. Where he was a hammer, she was a stiletto. She was an Italian heiress who had tripled her family's fortune, and she had been in a bidding war with Blackwood for the Alaxu Valley territory for 6 months. She too knew of the Ubik document, and she too had been unable to translate it. Her failure, however, had turned to alarm when, 24 hours ago, Blackwood's entire legal team had suddenly, aggressively, changed their position. They were no longer trying to buy the land. They were filing an injunction based on a prior ancestral claim. He translated it, Isabella said to her team in her own Milanese war room. He found someone. How? Her head of security, a former Mossad agent named Kale, brought up a file. We don't know how, but we know who. We tracked all of Blackwood's high-level payments. 5:12 a.m. this morning. $500,000 wired from a shell corp to an offshore account. The account was opened 10 minutes prior. We tried to trace the account holder. And? It's a ghost, Kyle said. But we do have this. The night of the transfer, Blackwood was at Aura. His team was seen in a panic. Then for 6 hours the entire restaurant was locked down. No one in or out. But one staff member, a waitress, didn't leave until 6 a.m. She was escorted by Blackwood's personal security. Isabella leaned forward. A waitress? Ellie Vance, age 27. No social media, no credit history before 5 years ago. Lives in a walk-up in the Bronx. Mother died 2 years ago. Massive medical debt. She's clean. Too clean. Nobody is too clean, Isabella murmured. She's not a waitress. She's a cutout, a ghost. Dig deeper. Find out who she was before she was Ellie Vance. Back in Blackwood's penthouse, Ellie was digging. The clue, he who speaks the mountain's tongue, wasn't a poetic flourish. It was a linguistic map. The mountain's tongue referred to the specific phonology of the Ubik language, which had a staggering 84 consonants, many of which were named for the sounds of the mountain, the whistle of the wind, the crack of the ice, the rumble of the rock. She was cross-referencing this with known Ubik family lines and migration patterns. The warlord who wrote the pact had a blood brother who had fled during the Russo-Circassian War. His family, the Shvakhov family, had scattered. Most went to Turkey. While she worked, Blackwood's research chief, the woman from the restaurant, walked in and placed a tablet on her desk. Dr. Jackson Haas, the chief said. We have him. Ellie's blood turned to ice. On the screen was a live security feed. A man, portly and self-important with a manicured beard, was gesturing wildly, giving a lecture at Columbia University. We ran a full forensic audit on his financials and digital footprint, going back 6 years, the chief said. Dr. Vance, you didn't just lose your data. It was sold. Ellie looked up. What? Haas sold your thesis. Not to a university, but to a corporation. A rival of ours, in fact. Rossi Corp. He sold them your preliminary Ubik translations, the same ones he used to publicly disprove your work. He claimed your translations were creative fiction. But Rossi Corp used them. They are the reason Isabella Rossi knew the Alaksu Valley was valuable in the first place. She's been working off your stolen research for 5 years. Ellie felt sick. It wasn't just academic theft. Her life's work had been the seed for this entire corporate war. Haas hadn't just ruined her. He'd sold her out. Where is the proof? Ellie whispered. Right here, the chief said, tapping the tablet. A hidden transaction, a shell company, $1.5 million paid by a subsidiary of Rossi Corp to an account controlled by Haas, 2 weeks before he published his paper against you. He sold me for $1.5 million, Ellie said, her voice hollow. Blackwood has the data now, the chief said. It's ironclad. It proves the link between Haas and Rossi. It proves your data was stolen. He will hold on to this. He will release it when you have fulfilled your end of the bargain. The message was clear. Find the brother of the word, or the proof of your innocence vanishes. Ellie looked back at her own screen. The Shvakov family line. She had found a possible descendant, an old man, a linguist and historian, living in a small village near the Black Sea. He was known locally as a storyteller, a man who spoke the old ways. "I know where to go," Ellie said, her voice now flat and cold. "We're going to Turkey." Meanwhile, in Milan, Isabella Rossi's agent, Kyle, put down his phone. "We found her," he said. "The waitress?" "Dr. Ellie Vance, the disgraced prodigy. We found her old advisor, Dr. Aris Thorne. He's retired, living in Vermont, full of regret. He confirmed the whole story. Haas stole her work. She was a genius. Her specialty?" Isabella looked up. "Don't say it." "Extinct Caucasian languages," Kyle said. "Specifically, Uzbek." Isabella slammed her fist on her desk. "She's not a ghost. She's the key. Blackwood doesn't just have a translator. He has the one person alive who can understand the context. And we're the ones who've been using her stolen scraps all this time." "There's more," Kyle said. "Blackwood and Vance just boarded a private jet. Flight plan filed for Istanbul." Isabella smiled, a thin, dangerous expression. "He's going for the second piece. He's going for the brother of the word." She must have translated that part, the part we never had. She stood up, grabbing her coat. "Get the plane. I'm not letting that arrogant pig steal my prize, and I'm not letting him use that poor girl's work against her, without my permission." The village was a cluster of stone houses, clinging to the side of a steep, fog-shrouded mountain, a few hours outside of Trabzon, Turkey. It was a place where the modern world felt like a distant rumour. Ellie and Blackwood arrived in a black, armoured SUV, followed by 2 more vehicles full of Blackwood security. The air was cold and smelled of wet earth and wood smoke. Ellie, dressed in a severe black wool coat, stepped out, Blackwood at her side. "This is it," Blackwood said, his voice full of disdain for the primitiveness of the place. "This is it," Ellie confirmed. She felt strangely calm. The linguistic trail had ended here, at the house of a man named Mr. Adil Shvakov. They were met at the door of a small, neat stone house by a young woman who introduced herself as Mr. Shvakov's granddaughter, Elif. She looked at Blackwood and his security detail with open suspicion. "We are here to see Mr. Shvakov," Blackwood's head of security stated. "My grandfather is old. He does not see visitors," Elif said, her English excellent. Ellie stepped forward, cutting off the security guard. She spoke to Elif, not in English, but in formal Turkish. "Please, Hanım Efendi, we are not here to trouble him. We are here to ask about history, about the language." Elif's eyes widened slightly. She replied in Turkish. "What history?" Ellie paused, then spoke one word in the Uzbek she had only ever read. "A greeting." Elif's suspicion turned to shock. She stared at Ellie, then nodded slowly. "Wait here." She returned a minute later. "He will see you," she said, pointing to Ellie. "You, alone." Blackwood immediately bristled. "Absolutely not. She doesn't go anywhere alone." "Then he will not see her at all," Elif said, unmoving. "And you will have wasted a long trip." Blackwood looked at Ellie. He was furious, but he was also a businessman. He needed this. Ellie met his gaze. "I'll be fine. This isn't a negotiation. This is an audience." He nodded, a sharp, angry gesture. "You have 10 minutes. You are wired." Ellie knew. She had felt the small device being clipped to her bra that morning. She followed Elif inside. The house was simple, warm and clean. In a chair by a small fireplace sat a man who must have been 90. He was frail, with eyes as clear and sharp as chipped ice. This was Adil Shvakov. He looked at her, his gaze penetrating. He spoke, not in Turkish, but in the same archaic, guttural Ubik she had studied. You have the voice of my ancestors, but the eyes of a stranger. Who are you? Ellie's heart hammered. To hear it spoken, it was like meeting a ghost. She replied, her Ubik academic and stilted, but correct. My name is Ellie. I am a keeper of words. I have read the Alaksu Compact. The old man's eyes sharpened. No one has read the compact in 100 years. It is half a key, a lock without a door. I know, Ellie said, her fluency growing with every second of use. I am here because the compact is in danger. A man of great power, wants to open the valley. He wants to take the earth. Adil Shvakfan nodded, a deep, sad motion. They always do. My family has been the guardian of the other half. The brother of the word is not a person. It is our family. It is our story. He gestured to a carved wooden box on his mantle. My ancestor, the warlord's brother, did not trust the pact. He believed the land was not to be claimed, but to be served. He wrote his own addendum, the real key. Elif brought the box. Inside was not a vellum document, but a series of knotted cords, a quipu of sorts, and a single thin sheet of hammered copper. The pact you read, Adil said, is a test. The vellum document only leads to greed. The copper document leads to truth. Ellie looked at the copper sheet. It was etched in the same Ubik script, but it was different. It wasn't a legal text. It was a poem. It described the glowing moss not as a sign of minerals, but as a sacred medicine. It described the valley not as a mine, but as a cradle. And then she saw the final lines. It was a cultural and environmental charter. The land shall give its fire, Ellie read aloud, translating as she went, only to those who serve its cradle. Should the hand of greed seek to break the earth, the cradle will be poisoned, the fire will turn to ash, and the sky fire, the curse, will be the barren land itself. It wasn't a curse. It was a geological warning. The mineral deposit, the fire, was unstable. If it was strip-mined, as Blackwood intended, it would oxidize, contaminating the entire region's water table. It would destroy the valley. The glowing moss was a bioremediation agent, keeping the deposit stable. It's not a mine, Ellie whispered in English, forgetting the wire. It's an ecological disaster waiting to happen. The compact isn't a claim. It's a warning. In the SUV down the street, Blackwood heard her words. His face turned to thunder. She's lying. He's feeding her nonsense. Sir, his research chief said, her face pale. The geological surveys, there were anomalies we ignored. A high presence of sulfur and iron sulfides. If disturbed, she's right. It would cause catastrophic acid mine drainage. Blackwood didn't care. It can be managed, contained. I don't care about the water. I care about the deposit. Back in the house, Ellie felt a hand on her arm. She looked up. A woman stood in the doorway, elegant, dressed in a cashmere coat, and flanked by two men who looked far more dangerous than Blackwood's corporate security. It was Isabella Rossi. Dr. Vance, Isabella said, with a warm, predatory smile. What a fascinating story. Please do continue. Elif and her grandfather looked on, confused but not frightened. How? Ellie stammered. My people are very good, Isabella said, stepping into the room. She looked at Adil Shvakf. Please, sir. My apologies for the intrusion. My name is Isabella Rossi. I, too, am a student of history, and I, too, am an enemy of the man outside in the truck. She turned back to Ellie. Alistair Blackwood is a brute. He is using you. He has been using your stolen work my company foolishly bought from that fraud Haas, for years. He is going to get what he wants, and then he is going to dispose of you. And you're different? Ellie asked, her voice shaking. I am, Isabella said. I don't want to rape this valley. I want to harvest it. The moss, this bioremediation agent, that is the prize, not the minerals. A stable, natural agent that can neutralize toxic earth, that is worth 1,000 times more than some unstable mineral. But I need the original, stable source. I need the valley intact. She stepped closer to Ellie. Blackwood has the proof of your innocence, doesn't he? He's holding it over you. I know this because I have a copy. The transaction records between Haas and my subsidiary. It's embarrassing, but it's yours. She held out a small, encrypted USB drive. Join me, Dr. Vance. Help me create a foundation, a trust, with Mr. Schwakov's family. We will preserve this land, study the moss, and synthesize it. You will be in charge of the entire linguistic and historical preservation. And, as a signing bonus, she held up the drive, the proof. Your name cleared. Today. All you have to do is walk out of this house with me and leave Alistair Blackwood with his useless, half-true translation. Ellie was trapped. Blackwood, outside, was a monster, but Isabella, inside, was a serpent. One offered destruction, the other, a silver-tongued temptation. From the truck, Blackwood had heard it all. He had heard Isabella's offer. He saw his 2 security men outside the cottage door, suddenly confronted by Rossi's 2 men. It was a standoff. He grabbed his radio. We're not losing her. Move in, now. Take the box. Take the girl, I don't care how. The door to the cottage burst open. Blackwood's 2 security guards, former military, all business, rushed in, weapons drawn but pointed at the floor, a show of force meant to intimidate, not kill. Dr. Vance, step away from them. You are leaving. Now. Isabella's 2 men moved like shadows, fluid and fast, placing themselves between her and the intruders. They didn't draw weapons, they just stood, and their presence was a far more credible threat. Alistair, you brute! Isabella's voice lilted, knowing he was listening on the wire. Always the hammer. Can't you see you've already lost? Blackwood himself was now striding up the path, his face a mask of cold fury. He entered the cottage, his sheer presence dominating the small space. He ignored Isabella, his eyes fixed on Ellie. The box, he commanded his men, pointing at the carved Ubik heirloom. No! Elif cried, moving to protect it. Stop! Ellie shouted, stepping in front of Elif. The entire room froze. The 4 armed men, 2 on each side, were balanced on a knife edge. Mr. Schwakf watched from his chair, his expression one of profound, ancient sadness. Ellie turned to face Alistair Blackwood. The fear was gone. The desperation was gone. All that was left was a cold, pure, linguistic precision. You can't take it, Mr. Blackwood, she said, her voice quiet but ringing with authority. I can and I will, Dr. Vance. You work for me. No, Ellie said, I don't. And you don't get it, even after I told you. She tapped her own chest, where she knew the wire was. You're still thinking like a thief. You think you can take this. She turned to Isabella. And you? You're no better. You're just a more polite thief. You want to harvest it. You want to use it. But both of you are missing the point. She turned back to the old man, Adil Schwakf, and spoke in Ubik. Grandfather, forgive this intrusion. They are fighting over the land. They do not understand the sky fire warning. They think it's a curse or a metaphor. The old man replied, his voice weak but clear. It is both. The poison in the water is the metaphor. The greed is the curse. Ellie translated this for the room, Blackwood scoffed. Save the poetry. I'm taking the girl and the text. And what will you do, Alistair? Isabella taunted. Start a firefight in a Turkish village? The international incident would destroy your company, even if you won. I don't need to, Blackwood sneered. I have the wire. I have her translation. I have her voice admitting it's all real. I have enough. But I am taking my employee back. She's not your employee, Isabella said. She's your victim. And I have the proof. She dangled the USB drive. The Haas transaction. Give her to me, Alistair, or this goes public. Your entire Alaxu claim will be based on academic fraud you've been funding for years. It's a bad look. It was a brilliant counter-move. Blackwood, for the first time, looked uncertain. He knew Isabella was right. His claim was based on Ellie's validation, but Isabella could prove that her initial claim was also based on Ellie's stolen work. It was a legal paradox that would tie them both up in court for a decade, bleeding money. While they were locked in their billionaire standoff, Ellie was thinking. She was processing the texts, the geological warning, the greed, the two rival claims. She was processing her own anger, her stolen life, the proof dangling from Isabella's fingers. She saw the path, not between them, but through them. You're both wrong, Ellie said, her voice cutting through the tension. They both looked at her. You're still fighting over the old prize, Ellie said to Blackwood. The minerals. But you're right, she said to Isabella. They're worthless. The stabilization process would cost more than the minerals are worth. The sky fire is acid mine drainage. It would poison the entire Black Sea coast. Exactly, Isabella said, sensing victory. The real prize is the moss. Wrong again, Ellie said. The moss is the prize, yes. But you can't harvest it. You can't synthesize it. I read the copper text. It's not just a poem, it's a formula. The moss isn't a thing, it's a process. It's a symbiotic biome that only grows in that valley, in balance with that specific mineral deposit. It cannot be replicated. It can only be stewarded. Isabella's smile faltered. What are you saying? I'm saying you can't take it. You can't move it. You can't mass-produce it. You can't harvest it without killing it. The only way to access the unique properties of the moss is to bring things to it, on site, under its own terms. Blackwood and Rossi stared. This changed the entire business model. So, Blackwood said, his mind already churning, a monopoly, a single-source location, even better. We just need to control the valley. But you can't, Ellie said, because of the compact, the real one, the copper one. Mr. Schwakov holds the cultural and legal key. Without his family's blessing, without the brother of the word, any claim is void. It's an indigenous rights charter, and I'm the only one who can translate it, validate it, and execute it. The room was silent. Ellie had just, in 30 seconds, checkmated both of them. Blackwood had the muscle. Isabella had the stolen historical claim. But Ellie had the language, and the language, it turned out, was the key to all of it. So, Ellie said, turning to Mr. Schwakov and speaking in Ubik. Grandfather, these two wolves want to tear your valley apart. But what if we put them on a leash? She turned back to the billionaires. Here is the new deal. Not yours, Alistair. Not yours, Isabella. Mine. You will form a new corporation, a joint venture. Rossi Corp, Blackwood Industries, and a new third entity, the Alaxu Schwakov Trust. A what? Blackwood growled. A foundation, run by Mr. Schwakov's family and his community, Ellie continued, her voice iron. The trust will hold a 51% controlling interest in the venture. It will own the land in perpetuity. Your companies will provide the capital, the science, and the infrastructure to build a world-class, zero-impact research facility in the valley. You will study the moss, you will bring projects to the moss, and you will share the patents. But the trust will have the final say on everything. That's insane, Blackwood said, giving control to them. They are the brother of the word, Ellie said. It's the only way the compact is valid. It's that, or you both walk away with nothing. And I help Mr. Schwach file the compact with the Turkish government and the UN, claiming indigenous cultural heritage. Your permits will be buried forever. Your choice. Isabella Rossi started to laugh, a genuine, appreciative laugh. She's magnificent. She's absolutely magnificent. She's just cornered us both. Blackwood was calculating, his mind racing. A 49% stake in a global monopoly on a miracle bioremediation agent, controlled by a bunch of villagers? It was infuriating. But it was still a monopoly. And you, Dr. Vance? Isabella asked. Where do you fit into your grand new plan? I, Ellie said, will be the chief executive of the Alaksu Schwach Trust. I will be the liaison, the chief translator, and the head of the preservation project. I will ensure the compact is honored. And for my services, she looked at Blackwood. I want the Haas data. All of it. Now. She looked at Isabella. And I want your copy too. And I want a public, formal apology from Rossi Corp, acknowledging that Dr. Jackson Haas sold you stolen research, and that my original work was, in fact, the foundation of your entire project. Isabella's smile vanished. That would be corporate suicide. No, Ellie said. That will be restitution. You will position it as righting a great academic wrong. You'll be a hero, and you'll have 24.5% of $1 trillion idea. Blackwood gets the other 24.5%. The trust gets 51%. That is the deal, or we all walk. Blackwood and Rossi looked at each other. They were rivals, enemies to the bone. But they both recognized a good deal when they saw one, even if it was a deal they were being forced to take. She's a shark, Blackwood said, almost admiringly. She's a linguist, Isabella corrected. It's far more dangerous. Ellie held her ground, her gaze unflinching. The waitress was gone. The victim was gone. Dr. Vance was finally, fully in control. The agreement, hammered out in that tiny stone cottage and formalized by frantic, high-priced lawyers in Istanbul over the next 24 hours, was brutal. It was exactly as Ellie had dictated. The Alaksu Schwach Trust was formed, with Mr. Adil Schwach as its honorary chairman and Dr. Ellie Vance as its CEO. Blackwood and Rossi, furious but trapped, became minority partners in the most valuable new scientific venture on Earth. But the deal was only the beginning. Ellie's war had two fronts. The valley was one. Her life was the other. 3 weeks later, Ellie Vance walked onto the campus of Columbia University. She was no longer in a waitress uniform or a borrowed wool coat. She wore a dark, custom-tailored suit that whispered authority. She was flanked by 2 lawyers, not security guards. She walked past the lecture hall where she had seen him on the security feed. She went straight to the dean's office. Dr. Jackson Haas was already inside, along with the dean and the university's general counsel. He had been summoned, and he was sweating. "Dr. Haas," Ellie said, her voice neutral. She placed a thick binder on the table. "Ellie, my God, I heard you were—" "I didn't know where you'd gone," he stammered, trying to smile. "You knew," Ellie said, cutting him off. "You've known every day for 5 years." I don't know what you mean," Haas said, looking at the dean. "Dean, this is a troubled former student." "Dr. Haas," Ellie's lawyer said, "in this binder, you will find wire transfer confirmations from a Rossi Corp subsidiary to a shell account in your name. You will find server logs from the university with your IP address, accessing Dr. Vance's dissertation drafts. You will find the original, time-stamped files from Dr. Vance's hard drive, which Mr. Blackwood's forensic team kindly recovered. Haas's colour drained away. He looked deflated. But, he sputtered. Rossi Corp, they signed NDAs. They did, Ellie said. But as part of their new partnership with me, they were required to make a public statement. It went live on the Associated Press newswire. 10 minutes ago, it's titled, Rossi Corp acknowledges role in academic fraud. Partners with vindicated Dr. Ellie Vance. Haas's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. It's over, Jackson, Ellie said, not with triumph, but with a bone-deep weariness. You sold my life for $1.5 million. You built your entire career on my back, and now it's done. The dean, looking grey, cleared his throat. Dr. Haas, given this evidence, you are suspended, effective immediately, pending a full board review. Please, escort yourself off campus. Haas looked at Ellie, his eyes full of a pathetic, desperate hatred. He had been outmaneuvered by a corporate machine he didn't even know existed. He stood, his career, his reputation, his entire life, evaporated. He walked out of the room, a ghost. Dr. Vance, the dean said, turning to her. On behalf of this university, I cannot apologize enough. We would be honored to offer you your tenure, a full professorship. Anything. Ellie looked around the office, at the old books, the smell of dust and polish. This had been her dream. This room. This life. Thank you, Dean, she said. But I'm not here for a job. She slid a second proposal across the table. I'm here to establish the Dr. Aris Thorne and Ellie Vance Institute for Endangered Languages. My new foundation will be funding it with an initial endowment of $50 million. I will be on the board. My first act will be to request the immediate reinstatement of Dr. Thorne, my former mentor, as its first director. 6 months later. The gala was in a glass-walled pavilion overlooking the Alaksu Valley itself. The glowing moss was visible in the distance, a faint, beautiful luminescence under the stars. The valley was thriving. The research center, built with ecological precision, was already producing groundbreaking results. Ellie Vance stood at the podium. She was the keynote speaker. In the front row, Alistair Blackwood and Isabella Rossi sat at the same table. They were not friends, but they were allies. They were both absurdly wealthy, and becoming more so every day thanks to the trust. They watched Ellie with a mixture of profound respect and a healthy amount of fear. Seated next to them was a reinvigorated Dr. Aris Thorne, who wept openly as Ellie spoke. At the table next to him was Adil Shvakov and his granddaughter, Elif, who was now head of the community board. Ellie finished her speech about the power of language, not just to communicate, but to preserve. We are told to believe that power lies in money or in force, she said, her voice ringing out. But true power, the only real power, lies in understanding. It lies in the words we use, the stories we protect, and the truths we are brave enough to translate. She raised her glass to the brother of the word, to the mountain's tongue. Later, Alistair Blackwood approached her at the balcony. Dr. Vance, he said, nodding. Quite an operation you're running. It's an operation you're welcome to remain a part of, Mr. Blackwood, she said, smiling faintly. As long as you remember the rules. Oh, I remember, he said. He paused, looking out at the valley. That day, in the restaurant. Did you know? Did you know then who I was? What was on that tablet? Ellie sipped her champagne. I knew you were an arrogant man in an expensive suit, Mr. Blackwood. And I knew you were mistaking the possessive marker for the ergative case. Blackwood actually chuckled. To the translator, he said, raising his glass. To the translator, Ellie replied. She had her life back. She had her name back. And she had built something that would outlast them all because she had been the only one who could read the fine print. And just like that, the invisible waitress, Ellie Vance, proved that the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. She didn't just translate a dead language. She translated the greed of 2 billionaires into a future for an entire community. She used her mind not as a weapon, but as a shield and a key, unlocking her own stolen past and securing a future for generations. She turned her greatest pain into her greatest power. What did you think of Ellie's story? Do you think Alistair and Isabella truly changed, or were they just outmaneuvered by a true genius? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We post incredible stories of drama, karma, and surprise reveals every single week. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing this video with a friend, and most importantly, subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to ring that bell so you never miss an update.